Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this situation that we're in concerning the issue of heating cages has gotten a bit ridiculous. I've had people call, how do I heat my cage? What temperature do I need? I'm going to breed. This spider needs this. This spider doesn't eat. It's not coming out. It's hanging out on the roof. It's obviously cold. What do I do? And, but don't tell anybody on arachnoboards, and don't tell anybody this, and don't tell anybody how I buy spiders from, because no one's going to like me anymore. I've gotten close to a dozen emails and private messages and stuff like this. And rather than repeat myself each and every time and possibly miss one or two important points that I don't want to miss, I'm going to make this video describing how to safely heat up tarantula cages, and to this matter, probably scorpion cages. May apply to your centipedes and millipedes as well. Don't know, don't own any. Your mileage may vary. And probably in the fossorial species, of course, there's a few considerations for that. So, in order to give the devil his due, or her due, or whatever, in this particular case, I'm going to start off with the disadvantages of heating. Then I'm going to go into the techniques, and then I'm going to go into the advantages, which outweigh the disadvantages. And of course, I'll mention a few flip sides as well. So first of all, let's see, I'm standing in front of here. I don't really need to stand in front of this thing. First of all, screw ups can be fatal. If you do this wrong, if you use the techniques that I tell you, you're not going to do it wrong. But if somehow or other you screw it up, that they can be fatal. You might injure, you might kill your spider. However, the flip side of that is that cold temperatures, including even mild cold ones, can also cause injury, but we'll get to that in the advantages. Second disadvantage is your mileage may vary. Animals are individuals. Any animal that reproduces sexually produces an individual that is genetically unique from its fellows, identical twins aside. And each one of these critters is going to have its own metabolism, its own dietary requirements, its own growth rate, and its own little particular personality traits and quirks that you have. Spiders are individuals. And if you look at the newer problems that people are having with hybrids, that variability no doubt increases even further. And also, some species can't be heated at all. For some species, 80 degrees is fatal. You cannot heat them up beyond room temperature. In fact, you might even have to cool your home and environment to meet them. And I'm thinking of the Poecilotheria subfusca highland, the M. robustum, and there's a few species like that, and there may be one or two others where you really cannot do this. 99% of the thousands of species of spiders doesn't apply to, but you do want to make sure, especially if you get one that's not all that common, make sure that it doesn't fall into that category. Probably not. The ones that have that property, we know who they are. Okay. Third disadvantage is that your appetite, the spider's hotter, it's going to eat more. It's going to grow faster. Okay. You're going to have to spend more money on crickets and more money on roaches, and you're going to be going to PetSmart. If you pick up one or two crickets each time you feed your spider, if you buy a cricket and feed your spider and buy a cricket and feed your spider that way, you may be doing that 3 times a week instead of once or twice a week. They're going to eat more, they're going to grow faster. The other thing is that these animals are wild animals. They cannot be tamed. And if you create the conditions of the wild and you heat it up and You get that, heat to where it is at the equatorial latitudes, and you maybe even pump the humidity up just a little bit. You don't want to overdo that. Your attitude is going to go down. They're going to be more aggressive. They're going to be less tractable, and they're going to be faster. A fast defensive animal, your OBTs, your HMAX, stromatopellicasiatums and all that, they're going to be even faster. You're going to give them, you're going to turbocharge those guys. You're going to put a supercharger on them, and they're going to do what they do even better than they normally do it anyway. Of course, if you do have to rehouse your spider or whatever, or maintain your cage, it does be, one can simply work around that by pulling the plug for 2 or 3 hours before, and then, when they go to the cold side and hide, then you can do what you have to do. So it's not that big of a deal, but, it is a disadvantage. Fourth disadvantage, your cost, your equipment. Adds to the cost of the enclosures. Your one-time equipment, your thermometers, the digital, that's a one-time expense, very modest. You get them once, they last for years, and aside from batteries, and never need them again. The other thing you're going to need in addition to your enclosure, you're going to need for each cage, for each heating unit or combination, you're going to need one of these switches. This is a voltage controller, rheostat switch. It's off, low, medium, high. Clockwise is high, counterclockwise it's low. It's just like turning a screw. It's just like the voltage switches on the walls that you use for your romantic setting lamps where they go up and down. You can even use that. The problem is if you do use that electrical outlet now belongs to your spider and not you. And if your TV doesn't work or your computer doesn't charge because it's turned down, guess what? You got to find another outlet. So you may not really want to do that. The other, of course, disadvantage, the spider grows fast. You have less time to grow with your spider. If you're a new keeper, or maybe you're keeping, you're keeping something a little on the aggressive side, or, gee, I really shouldn't have bought that OBT sling. Oh my God. You're going to have less time to grow with a spider because they will grow faster. Same thing. The other thing with this is the change that you get when you warm these enclosures is beneficial, but it's a change in degree, not in kind. You're not going to get probably not going to get your Brachypelma smithi to, become an adult in 1 year. You're probably not going to get your Chalcodes, which takes 7 or 8 years to mature in 7 or 8 months. Probably not. Although the slow growing species will definitely grow less slow, and an animal that takes 2 or 3 years to mature is different than an animal that takes 3, 4, or 5 years to mature. There's still some improvement, but it's a change in degree, not in kind. Of course, when they grow faster, you have more frequent molts. Got to be more aware of your molting and pre-molting, and there's probably going to be less time in pre-molt, and so you're going to have to be a little bit better at spotting that. Of course, the other disadvantage is humidity and water. Now, if you have a dry species, desert species, this is good. It keeps the humidity down. Most spiders, even slings, should have a water dish. And instead of checking that once a day, or maybe even every other day, if you're kind of a slacker, when you heat these cages up, you must check these things twice a day and keep them full and overflow a little bit if it's a wet spider, and if it's a dry species, keep it at the 3/4 level. If you do this, you must check them twice a day. Dehydration is the killer, even more than temperature is. So with that, what we're going to, and your humidity, not as important as people think, but it should be moderate. I mean, your typical home humidity system, your HVAC guy is probably going to set it between 40 to 60%, and you're just for your house. Probably for most spiders, except for the ones that really, really need extra humidity, where it's known that they need it, or the ones that really, really, really hate it, and we know that, most of them is probably going to be okay. So with that, we're going to go into the techniques of how you set these temperatures up. So you have let's say this is your light source. Plug in your light. Your light source here, or heat source, should be no closer than 8 inches to the top of the cage. That is the minimum. 12 inches is better. You can have you know, there are many different brackets. There are many different ways of doing this. You can hang a chain from the ceiling. You can put an L bracket on the wall. You can get the, you know, the Zoom Ed support brackets where you put it under the cage and holds it, or you can just take, you know, a coat hanger, baling wire, or even this little L bracket. And let me see, let me get another one. Yeah, stick it on the side. Stick a bolt out, put your light in here like this. I mean, there are different ways of mounting lights. The other thing is when you mount this, you don't want it over the center of the top. You want to heat up a corner. You want to always try to get a hot side and cold side. Okay. The disadvantage that I should have mentioned here is that these setups are not friendly to change. If you change the substrate, if you change the type of substrate, if you add a new decoration, if you add a new heat source, if you change the temperature of your room, the spider has to come out of the enclosure and you have to go through the procedure and optimize it all over again. Once you get it set up, you can't change it very much without risk of harming your animal. In particular with substrate and decorations and accessories, if it's darker in color, denser, or heavier, in particular with those, you really have to assume they're going to raise the temperature and raise it a lot. And you have to go through and optimize it again. With these lights and the heaters and stuff, you generally don't want to go over 25 watts. Less is more. What we want here is a gentle heat. And remember, if you change, what we want to have is it coming straight down onto a corner. So that way this side is hot here up in this corner, and this side down in this corner is cool. Even in a vertical cage, you can still have a hot side and a cold side. This lets the spider choose where it wants to be. An important advantage over heating up your entire room. With a space heater, for one thing, those are dangerous. But even if you have a heat pump in your window, which is the safe way to control temperature in the room, and you have a constant temperature, that's it. They better like what your temperature is. They can't choose. You do it this way, they can. So typically, even in my Poecilotheria enclosure, I heat up this little corner here, and this side is cold. Okay. If I move my lamp from here to this position, it's farther away. But guess what? The light is striking the top and the side of the cage. This position generates more heat than this position. Just because you move it farther away does not mean it's going to be cooler. If you change one thing, you have to do this all over again. Period. End of story. So what we're going to do, once we get the temperature where we think we want it, and you're checking that temperature, the first step is to do a hand check of the temperature. You're going to put one hand on your forehead, and you're going to put the other hand on the cage. You're going to, using this hand on your forehead, you're going to touch the top of the cage where the light is. If this thing is hotter than your forehead, it's too damn hot. We can know that right now. You're going to check, you're going to feel, and you might take your hand off your forehead and go like this. You're going to look at your sides. You're going to pick the enclosure up, feel the bottom. With tarantulas, they do not know how to behave appropriately when the heat level is below them. In nature, the sunlight is above your tarantula. Forest fires and so on, or flooding and whatnot is to the side. So if it's too hot to the left side, you know, let's say to the right side, the tarantula knows how to move to the left. If it's too hot overhead, the tarantula knows to go down. If it's hot, they go dark and they go down. If it's cold, they go for height and they go for light. Important consideration, if your tarantula is too cold, it can fall. We'll get to that with the advantages. So you're going to do your hand check. Okay, the cage is definitely warm. It's warmer than the room, but cooler than my body heat. The outside isn't good enough. What you have to do is you have to do the same thing on your inside. Let's pretend this is filled with substrate. You're going to touch your substrate. You're going to touch your sides. In this cage, I'm going to stick my hand in the vermiculite. If I have vermiculite, I'm going to reach my hand inside here and check. Inside. I'm going to reach it inside and check here. I'm going to feel my cork. I'm going to touch this area. I'm going to touch the screw. I'm going to feel my vent on one side. I'm going to feel my vent on the other side. I'm going to touch and feel everything. I'm looking for hot spots. I'm looking for areas that are where one part is like 20 or 30 degrees hotter, where it can burn or injure the animal. After I've, let's say, successfully concluded that my cage feels safe, now what I'm going to do, and this is the extra equipment you need to buy, is take this thermometer. If you recognize this, this thing is the same one that you use to check your ham and your turkey. If you put a little blunt thing on the tip of this, you could even use this to take your body temperature if you got rid of that sharp point. This thermometer is accurate. This thing will give you the temperature of ice water. It will give you the temperature of cool water. It's not just accurate at high temperatures. So what I'm going to do is put it in the substrate in several points. Push in, push the red button, put it in, push the red button, put it in, push the red button, and get my temperature. My substrate, this needs to be the coldest part of the cage. Cold down, hot up, no exceptions. Even if all the temps are good, if this is hotter than the top, it shouldn't be, but if it is, we got to do something. I'm going to take, this is a point and shoot thermometer. This is a Zoom Ed. The item number is RT1. Let me hold this up. You can see the readout on here. I can touch my hand, for example, my finger. You can see here is 90 degrees. I'm going to point and shoot here, point and shoot here, point and shoot here, point and shoot here. Now, if I don't have one of these other thermometers, I can definitely go into my substrate, dig a little hole, point and shoot, dig a little hole, point and shoot, dig a little hole, point and shoot, and I'm fine. I'm going to take the top, same thing, go up, point and shoot here. Probably going to start at the roof in the hot area. Going to shoot here on the outside, get all my corners, get my readings, and then I'm going to shoot on the inside. And if I have substrate, decorations, leaves, plants, rocks, cork bark, that stuff likewise gets hand checked and zapped with a thermometer. Check all your surfaces. What you're looking for is a smooth, even heat, hotter on the top on the hot side, cooler on the bottom on the cool side, and everything within the safe range. And what is your safe range? Don't go over 90 degrees. Unless the species specifically needs it, your max temp should be 90 degrees. And that's just on the outside. The inside, your max temp should only be 85, 86 at the most. Your optimal temp is going to be 80, the magic number that is oft criticized, but 80 is a good number, and your cold side should be around 77, 75, 72, 73, or whatever your room temperature is. So that's how you do one of these. Very, very simple. Very simple enclosure. And I realized it was actually easier to show people how to do this on a thing that wasn't yet complete set up. Now we'll go to something a little bit more complex. This guy is your Exoterra Mini. You'll note with these larger cages, it's always best to use two thermometers. It's always best to use two different models. This is a strip thermometer. This is probably going to be where the hot side of the enclosure is, because I'm going to shine on this corner. This temperature sensor goes to another thermometer. There's a humidity sensor behind here, and it goes into this unit. And you can see it's 30, the humidity is kind of low, 32%, 74 degrees. This thing has not been in this room. The room's actually colder. Same thing. Going to touch, probably going to start at the top, feel the top, touch the sides, go down here, after touching my forehead, going to lift up, feel the bottom, make sure I'm okay. It is very common to look at the chart. Hey, I got a thermometer here and it's safe. and I've got a thermometer here and it's a safe temperature. Am I good to go? No, you're not good to go. This area on top is going to be the warmest. We want to make sure that this area is maybe a little uncomfortable, a little bit hot, but still safe. You have to hand check it. There will be substrate in here when I'm done building it. Same thing. Go in here, check my substrate, check my substrate, check my substrate, check my substrate. Take my hand, reach in here, go along the side, feel the back, touch the plants, feel behind the plants. Here, touch the inner wall. Take your digital thermometer, point and shoot your door, point and shoot here, point and shoot here, hit the top, hit the back, hit underneath, hit inside, go here, look at my plants, get the ground. Of course, like I said before, do your substrate. The reason why you want to use two thermometers is because, you know, each one kind of gives a sanity check on the other one, and then, you know, make that adjustment. Excuse me, I'm going to shut that off. For the screen on top, the very tip top, we don't want to go over 90. Better yet, keep it under 88 and under. The hot side and the inside, 83, 84, cold side, 75. This is going to do the cold part. This little guy here is going to do your hot part. Reason why you use two different thermometers, again, it's a sanity check. And I'm going to turn my dial on my light either way. I don't have a heat pad on the back of this, but if you do have a heat pad, it has to be high up. You want the heat pad to be the same height as the spider or higher than the spider. You never want to have a heat source underneath the spider. They can't handle it. They will react inappropriately. They probably will harm or kill themselves. That's how you do one of these. This situation here may appear to be a little bit more complicated, but it's not. This is a heat pad that's on the side of the enclosure. The limitation with this is that your substrate level, your heat pad comes up to about here. You can see that's about as high as your substrate goes. We never have a heat pad underneath of substrate. That's the cutoff. So that's the limitation. First thing we're going to do when we plug this in is we're going to establish our max safe temperature. Since this thing is on the outside of the glass, that max safe temperature is probably going to be between 88 to 90 degrees. Remember, the tarantula is not going to be on the outside. The tarantula is going to be on the inside. The inside of this thing, unless your room is also hotter than that, is going to be a couple of degrees cooler. So we're going to measure our temperature here, 88, 90. We're going to take your digital thermometer here. After we do our hand check, same thing. Go here, go under. It makes sense to start with the hottest side of the cage first. This is our max temp here. Then we're going to check the other side here. And then we're going to work our way back. And then we're going to work our way down. Check the substrate. Make sure the substrate is cooler. We want the substrate down here to be cooler than the surface up here. The hottest part of this enclosure is going to be the inside corner where the lid goes. So you can see where this track of the lid is. This here, this surface, is going to be the hottest part of your cage. And when you take the lid off, as soon as you take the lid off, that's when you want to check it, when your temperature is the most accurate. This thing has to be safe. This is a terrestrial cage. Most of your terrestrials aren't going to be hanging out in that area. Mine hasn't. My Lasiodora hasn't, but you never know. Spiders cannot be counted on to act according to the laws of reason and common sense. That's how you do one of these. Of course, you'll check your substrate. Of course, see here, we have a skull. We'll do the same thing. Hand check it inside and out. Check it here, inside, inside out, and so on. And, you know, put this back in. These cages aren't complete. These cages aren't complete. Obviously, I'll do the heat check and optimize it when they're complete, but it's actually easier to demonstrate the techniques when the enclosures haven't been built yet, in my opinion. I'm going to put this back. So basically, that's how you do these. There's a two-stage process. The hot to cold, hand check, hot to cold, digital check. Being thorough, checking every area, and then we'll make the adjustments as needed. Now you can use distance. If you're using an external source like a heat lamp or whatever, you can use distance as a way of checking. You can go, I'm going to go between 8 inches and 12 inches or 16, and I'm going to find it this way. You can get heat this way. The problem with distance is you have to make sure that this pretend light doesn't fall onto your cage. If this thing falls onto the top of your screen, you're done. This thing cannot be closer, in my opinion, than 8 inches to anywhere the spider can be. If the spider can get up on the screen here and crawl around on this part, that's where they get hurt. So in other words, we never want to do this. We always want to have it up here. If for some reason you've gotten to 8 inches, you have your 25 watt, what you don't want to do is switch to a 40 watt or higher bulb. Because you want the heat to be gentle. You want to heat an area. You want it to be diffused. What you're going to do, get another lamp. We don't want to concentrate heat. We don't want to make a hot spot. You want to make a warm area, not a hot spot, because warm areas are safe, hot spots are not. So with that, I'm going to go on the advantages. The sling stage, when they're young, they don't have the protective waterproof coating on the exoskeleton. The sling stage of any spider is the most dangerous, highest mortality stage in their life. The only thing more fatal is, mature males, they're approaching their molt, they're going to die. That's the end of life. Beginning of life, that's the most dangerous part. And if you warm your cage, keep it typically 80 degrees, you're going to decrease that sling stage, and you're going to, and every day you're not a sling and that you are a juvenile or an adult is the day that you're safer. So you're going to decrease that. The other advantage you're going to have, it's the flip side of the disadvantage. You're going to have a higher activity level. Your spider is going to eat more. It's going to do better feeding videos. If you're into feeding videos, you should never handle your spider. It's not going to be handleable, but you shouldn't be handling them anyway. If it bites you because you handled it good, you shouldn't be handling these things unless it's an emergency situation. Spider's about to fall off the table. The cat is running at them at high speed and you put your hand over it to protect the spider, that kind of thing. Okay. Other advantage, if your spider, you get one from a pet store or whatever, or another owner, and it has a lost leg or it has an injury, that spider, because you've increased the metabolism, is going to heal that injury faster. And, it's going to recover better. The other advantage, strongly suspected, hard to prove, but strongly suspected, is that you're going to get a greater size increase for each molt. So each time it molts, it's going to increase the size better. Of course, for breeding these individuals, controlling your temperature, mimicking the climate is, of course, really, really important. If you're a breeder, you really want to be able to manipulate that temperature and humidity in conditions such that that animal requires. The other advantage, and this is something you are not going to hear from certain people on certain websites, who will tell you that he kills spiders, and if they're 70 degrees, they're perfectly safe. No, they're not. Remember, when these guys are cold, they go for height and they go for light. Now, if we have an arboreal spider, we don't care as much because, it climbs anyway. This is an arboreal cage, but I'll use it to make the point. When your spider is cold, he's going to go for height and light. He's going to hang on the screen. He's going to hang upside down. Because he's cold, his balance, his reflexes, or her balance and reflexes are not going to be up to par. This means they can go here, they're trying to get warm, it's not warm, boom, they fall. Or they end up hanging by one leg and falling. Or they'll be on the side, trying to get warm, something happens, boom, I fall down. When your spider goes for height and goes for light, it is at risk for a fall when it's cold because its reflexes, balance, grip strength are not up to par. If your spider is cold, you're more likely to be injured through falls and, stumbling around. You're also going to be more vulnerable if your spider is cold and it gets into a fight with a cricket or something like that because it's a little bit too big. The cricket is more likely to win. Because many times these feeders, like mealworms, for example, that tolerate refrigeration, are more tolerant of colder temperatures than tarantulas. If your spider is cold, you're giving the advantage to the prey item and taking that advantage away from the spider. Warmth saves lives. Okay? When they get hot, they go down and they go dark. So if it's too hot, what's going to happen is you're going to chase your spider underground in the corner. If your spider's hiding on the cold side, even if your temperatures you think are optimized, turn the temperature down. If you catch your spider up here all the time, hanging upside down on the screen, gradually increase your temperature higher, a little bit at a time. Monitor your spider, monitor your gauge, and just gradually increase it throughout the day until your spider will decide if your heat source is above or to the side. If the heat source is to the side, the first thing the spider's going to do is he's going to go around here. The second thing he's going to do, or she is going to do, is she's going to go down. And that means your spider is safe. This screen, 88 to 90 degrees, 90 max, that's uncomfortable. It's not dangerous to your spider, but you don't want to go higher than that. It's uncomfortable. Do keep in mind, there are people who handle their spiders even though they shouldn't, and they'll have the rose-haired tarantula on their shoulder, or sitting on their head, or on their arm, and things there for, 5, 10, 20 minutes, half an hour. Your body's 98.6 degrees. Your spider is essentially sitting on a hot rock that's you. Another trick people do with these guys is they'll chill the temperature. Look, I'm handling my OBT. I'm handling my P. regalis. Look at me, you're an idiot. What these idiots are doing is they're putting their spiders into temperatures like 55, 60 degrees, making the spider cold. Remember, your body's 98.6. If you take a cold spider and you put him on yourself, your spider's going to stay there. I'm getting warm. Look at me. I feel great. Until he gets warm enough, reaches his temperature, and decides to bite you. The idiots that do this know how long it takes for their spiders to warm up, and the spider is in the enclosure long before that happens. And then people copy it on YouTube and they get hurt, and the person who did it laughs their ass off at him. Or the person who did it, oh, my spider's tame. Look, it sits on my shoulder. Want to pay extra money for it? You know the selfie scorpion trick? Take H. spinifer. Repticon I went to, the seller said, oh, look, the scorpion can sit on your shoulder. It's friendly. You can take its picture. And indeed it did. It sat on my girlfriend's friend's shoulder. It sat on my shoulder, sat on my hand. In fact, it sat on my hand and dug all 8 of its legs into my hand. And they're like, look, the scorpion's friendly, it likes you. Scorpion doesn't like me, it's cold. Once you get that scorpion up to its temperature, 80 to 85 degrees, and those guys like it hot. Asian forest scorpion, Malaysian forest scorpion, they like it hot. You know, you shouldn't go higher than 85. The scorpion probably will, but for the sake of safety and prudence, you don't want to go higher than that. Once she's at 80 degrees, she don't like you anymore. She's hell on wheels. In fact, my scorpion wants to kill me. In fact, when she's 80 degrees, her fight song is Kill Everybody in the World by Skrillex. Every time I see that song, I think of Mama Scorp's attitude. Again, your mileage may vary between these animals. The scorpling that I kept, aka the trouble scorpling, loved the heat when I had them communally in their enclosure. I had 22 scorplings. Some of them would hide in the cold side corner, and that's where they stayed, and they were happy. Others would be in the middle. Trouble and his buddy, Double Trouble, would sit right under the light. They'd sit there. They would go run into the water dish, get rehydrated, come back, sit in the light. Of course, Trouble grew much faster than the other scorplings and was dominating them and beating them up. And for that reason, one of the reasons I had to sell them was simply because Trouble was getting bigger than the rest of them and was probably getting ready to kill all of them. Because Trouble was that much bigger and that, I decided, of course, he was a keeper. He wasn't going to go to the pet store or to a new home. I was going to keep him myself. Animals are individuals. Your mileage may vary. So hopefully you guys have learned something. Hopefully at least you've thought about something. And, I'll close with this remark. The other problem you're going to run into isn't a spider problem. It's a human problem. You're going to run into keepers that consider high temperatures their secret, or they're breeders that are protecting their trade secret, or they're people who tried to warm their enclosure differently and hurt their spider, and they're grieving for their pet, and they're psychologically injured. And when you do this successfully, even though you're successful and they're not, what's going to happen is they're going to project all that grief onto you, and they're going to get angry at you, and they're going to flame you on these boards and everything else and tell everybody how horrible of a person you are, because they haven't really got through their grieving process. It's kind of like, penis-free penis envy in a way, if I could say that. Can I say penis on the internet? I guess I can. But that's the way it is. So, you're going to trigger people psychologically, or people who keep these guys, 50 or 60 of them in a room and in warehouse conditions and almost like a factory, and they don't want to heat every cage. This technique is better suited to smaller collections, naturalistic settings, and display cages. If you have 50 spiders in 50 cages and you do this, you're not saving any more money than if you put a heat pump in the window and just heat up the entire room. It's the economy of scale is when you have a lot of these guys. The best way to do it, put a heat pump in your window, not a space heater, a heat pump. It'll save you lots of money on your power bill. It's much, much safer, much less likely to catch fire. Remember, most of the heat pump in a window is on the outside of your house. Okay, the majority of it's physically outside. So do it that way. Anyway, hopefully I helped everybody think. If you think of anything else, put it in the comments. I'm on YouTube. I'm White Lightning 777. Signing out. Thank you very much. Goodbye.